Title: Fox Spirit Matchmaker. Chapter 1. The First Red Thread. The twilight mist curled like soft fingers around the edge of Mount Xianlu, where the spirit foxes made their hidden home. The ancient pines whispered among themselves, and the air was thick with the scent of camellia blossoms. High atop a silver-glassed cliff, Yue Ling stood, a single crimson thread shimmering between her trembling hands. This was her first assignment. Below, in the human world, two souls glimmered faintly against the backdrop of the mortal village. A humble potter's daughter and a young falconer, their destinies intertwined. All she had to do was tie the red thread of fate between their hearts, a sacred task passed down by the Spirit Fox clan for countless centuries. But the thread wavered in her fingers, flickering like a dying flame. "Steady, Yue Ling," she muttered under her breath. "You trained for this. You can do it." From the shadows of a camphor tree, an elderly fox spirit, Master Bai, watched with hooded golden eyes. His long beard flowed in the night wind, and his 9 tails curled around him in a protective coil. "She is too young," he murmured to the elder spirits beside him. "The mortal veil is thinner this season, if she makes even a small mistake." But no one answered. All watched in tense silence. Yue Ling took a deep breath, her small hands glowing with a soft, pearly light. Carefully, she guided the thread downward, willing it to seek the 2 souls she had marked. The thread darted through the mist like a playful koi, but then an unexpected gust of spirit wind snapped it. The thread snapped violently in midair, whipping around her wrist and burning her skin. Below, the 2 mortals staggered and collapsed. The falconer suddenly gripped his chest, crying out, while the potter's daughter fell unconscious into the mud. The crimson thread, once a vibrant symbol of destiny, now lay in tatters. "No! No!" Yue Ling cried, stumbling forward, tears welling in her wide, amber-colored eyes. Master Bai appeared beside her with a soft rustle of robes. His face was grave. "The bond has been severed," he said heavily. "Their fates will drift apart. This village will fall into sorrow without their union." Yue Ling dropped to her knees, clutching the frayed remnants of the thread. "I didn't mean to. I just—" Bai raised a hand to silence her. The other spirits gathered, some whispering behind folding fans, others shaking their heads. "The council will hear of this," one of the elder foxes said coldly. "Spirit foxes are guardians of fate. A failure such as this cannot be ignored." Ashamed beyond words, Yue Ling bowed her head low to the ground. Chapter 2. Threads of Trial. Yue Ling stood before the jade steps of the Spirit Council, the great lantern hall casting long golden shadows upon her small, shivering form. Ancient fox spirits sat in a crescent of carved thrones, each illuminated by their own floating blue flame, the fires of judgment. Master Bai stood to her side as her mentor, his expression unreadable. "You endangered the harmony of the mortal world," intoned Elder Zhen, his third eye glowing upon his forehead. "The balance of fate is no toy for youth." "I understand," Yue Ling whispered. "For your transgression, you are sentenced to 10 matches," said another elder. 10 red threads, mended by your own hands. Fail but once, and your spirit shall be sealed away from the mortal world forever." Master Bai interjected calmly, "She accepts the burden. Let her be tested." The judgment passed. Yue Ling was sent from Mount Xianlu down to the mortal realm, her fox spirit form bound in a talisman, allowing her to walk among humans in human guise. She landed in a village cloaked in spring mist, her talisman humming against her chest. 10 threads, she whispered, 10 chances. Her first mission led her to a reclusive calligrapher named Liang Shen, a man whose heart was still tied to the ghost of his beloved. Beside him, a widowed tea mistress named Yue Ning, her heart weary but true. But fate would not bind them easily, for a demon fed on broken hearts, and it now lurked within the town. Yue Ling disguised herself as a traveling herbalist, her silver fox ears hidden beneath a wide-brimmed straw hat. She rented a modest room above a tea house and began to observe the townsfolk. Liangshan was a quiet, meticulous man. He rarely spoke to anyone, but every evening he would visit the memorial tablet in the shrine near the lotus pond, whispering to the spirit of his late wife. The grief in his eyes was a veil no smile could lift. Yue Ling, on the other hand, worked tirelessly to support her family, steeping rare leaves with an artistry that drew travelers from distant prefectures. Her kindness masked a loneliness that festered within. The two often crossed paths, their meetings brief and cordial. Yue Ling felt the dormant thread stir between them, but something blocked its binding. One misty night, while meditating beneath the plum blossoms, Yue Ling heard it, a low, keening cry that echoed through the spirit plane. A demon was near. She followed the sound through a grove and into an abandoned shrine. There, cloaked in a spectral mist, hovered a sorrow demon, an entity that fed on grief. Its elongated limbs writhed, and its many mouths whispered lies into the winds. He'll never forget her. She'll never be loved again. Love is nothing but loss. Yue Ling drew a charm from her sleeve and stepped forward. The demon hissed, its many eyes glowing with hate. The battle was not with blades, but with light. Yue Ling summoned the warmth of her own memories, of laughter under moonlight, of lullabies from her mother, of hope. The demon shrieked as her light pierced it, its shadow writhing until it collapsed into a pool of inky sorrow that seeped into the earth. In the aftermath, Liangshan wandered into the shrine. He stared at the withered altar and whispered, "I think I'm ready to let her go." Later, at the tea house, Yue Ling offered him a fresh brew with a gentle smile. Their hands brushed. Yue Ling, from her hidden perch, felt the red thread shimmer and grow taut. She had done it. 1 match complete. 9 more to go. Chapter 3. The Forbidden Courtyard. Yue Ling's next descent was not to a quaint village, but to the bustling, mist-veiled city of Jinju. The city gates rose tall as mountains, carved with talismans to ward off spirits, the work of cautious humans who feared what they did not understand. Yet, beneath that fear pulsed hundreds of restless hearts, tangled with unspoken desires and forbidden love. Her talisman glowed as she crossed into the city. Another thread had awakened. She took the guise of a wandering apothecary, renting a stall on Lotus Street. Between steaming pots of medicine and bundles of herbs, she waited. It was not long before the thread revealed itself. It belonged to Lin Xiang, the daughter of a powerful magistrate, and Qiao Yun, a young man raised in the household as a servant. Their love had blossomed in shadows, behind garden walls, in secret letters exchanged beneath moonlit eaves. But as Lin Xiang's marriage was arranged to a noble from the northern provinces, their thread frayed with every passing day. Worse, a fox spirit hunter had come to town. Ren Wu, robed in silver, bore talismans etched with ancient runes and eyes that never missed a lie. Yue Ling felt his aura before she saw him. Her blood ran cold. Still, she pressed forward. At night, she whispered guidance into Lin Xiang's dreams, gently pushing her toward courage. To Qiao Yun, she sent a dream of the thread pavilion, a vision of the girl he loved, reaching for him across fate. But love alone could not untangle the barriers. One stormy evening, Lin Xiang stood at the edge of the forbidden courtyard where her mother's spirit shrine lay. Yue Ling, veiled and hidden among the plum trees, watched. Lin Xiang lit incense and prayed not for escape, but strength. Meanwhile, Ren Wu cornered Yue Ling in an alley near the temple district. "You're no apothecary," he said, brandishing a talisman. "What is a fox doing meddling in mortal fate?" Yue Ling bowed her head. "They are meant to love. We only guide what already exists." He hesitated. Her aura was faint, fragile, not the mark of a manipulator, but a weaver. "One misstep and I seal your spirit." "I understand," she said. "But let them choose freely." That night, Lin Xiang fled her home and met Qiao Yun at the edge of the city. Guards pursued them, but Yue Ling created illusions in the fog, paths that led in circles, shadows that confused eyes. They reached a boatman who owed Yue Ling a favor from another lifetime. As the lovers vanished down the river, their thread pulsed with light. Yue Ling collapsed in the temple courtyard, exhausted but smiling. Another match complete. Back on Mount Xianlu, Elder Zhen gazed into the celestial pool, frowning. Her spirit grows stronger. Master Bai smiled faintly, as does her compassion. 2 threads mended. 8 to go. Chapter 4. The Crimson Bell. The air over Baihe Temple shimmered with summer heat as Yue Ling stepped out of the golden mist and into her 4th mission. The talisman on her wrist pulsed 3 times, then settled. The crimson bell at the temple's entrance swayed as if acknowledging her arrival, even though the air was still. A sign, she thought. This time, her disguise was that of a temple scribe, humble, unnoticed, and permitted access to the inner sanctum. The bell was no ordinary relic. Legend claimed it was gifted by a fox spirit over 1,000 years ago to seal a tragic love. It now hung cracked and silent in a neglected courtyard of the temple, and Yue Ling's thread glowed faintly beneath it. She met Mei Lan, a mute girl who tended to temple incense, and Zhen Yu, a disciple of the senior abbot who had once taken a vow of silence but now lectured to wide-eyed students. Zhen Yu was calm, composed, almost severe, but Yue Ling saw the flicker in his eyes when Mei Lan passed by. Mei Lan was more than she seemed. In her silence was sorrow, and in her every step, a suppressed yearning. Yue Ling followed her one night and watched as she knelt beneath the crimson bell, pressing her forehead to its cold surface. Mei Lan had once been a fox spirit, bound into human form to atone for misdeeds. She remembered nothing save for a name she uttered in dreams, Zhen Yu. The thread pulsed stronger. Days passed as Yue Ling uncovered fragments of their past lives. Long ago, Mei Lan and Zhen Yu had fallen in love, but he was a monk and she a spirit. When the temple's high priest discovered them, he struck a pact with the heavens to seal Mei Lan's powers and memories in exchange for her life. Zhen Yu, in despair, broke his vow of silence to plead for her forgiveness. The crimson bell cracked the day she was reborn. Now, history repeated. One evening, during the temple's Ghost Lantern Festival, Yue Ling guided the two to the old courtyard. Lanterns floated in the sky, casting soft glows over their faces. Mei Lan looked to Zhen Yu and placed his hand upon the bell. A hum vibrated through the air. Zhen Yu remembered. Tears fell silently from Mei Lan's eyes as her memories returned in waves. "I knew you," she whispered, the first words she had spoken in years. The bell rang once, a clear, resonant chime that echoed into the heavens. The seal was undone. The next morning, they were gone. Only footprints in the dew, and a cracked bell whole once more. Yue Ling offered incense at the altar and bowed. 3 threads mended. 7 to go. Back on Mount Xianlu, Master Bai stroked his beard. "She is growing faster than I expected." Elder Zhen closed his eyes. May her heart endure what her soul must carry. Chapter 5. The Lantern Keeper's Promise. The walled city of Lianshui gleamed with lantern light, its streets aglow in hues of crimson and gold. Yue Ling stepped onto the cobbled path as the scent of river lilies drifted from the canals. Her talisman sparked faintly. Another soul, another thread. This time, it led her to the Lantern Festival, held once every 12 years during the rare red moon. Lianshui's people believed the red moon illuminated secrets and revealed true hearts. Couples made vows beneath floating lanterns, but not all promises held joy. Her target was a young lantern maker named Shen Wei, known for crafting wishes into the wax and silk of his creations. He worked alone in a quiet workshop at the edge of the market, his lanterns famed across provinces for their uncanny accuracy in manifesting dreams. Yet his own heart remained untouched. Enter Yao Min, a blind herbalist who visited Shen Wei's shop to listen, not see, his lanterns. Their first meeting was a misunderstanding. Shen Wei accused her of stealing a lantern, while she simply followed its warmth with her hand. Yue Ling watched, cloaked as a traveling lantern vendor, as tension sparked between the two. But their fates were woven tighter than either knew. Yao Min had lost her sight in a fire 10 years ago, the same fire that claimed Shen Wei's family. He had crafted a single lantern to remember them, one that never dimmed and hung above his workbench. It pulsed when Yao Min entered the room. Curious, Yue Ling disguised herself as Shen Wei's assistant. Over days of silent observation, she noticed small signs. Yao Min's hand always brushed the exact lantern that soothed her dreams. Shen Wei, despite his aloof demeanor, began crafting lanterns that whispered melodies she alone could hear. The thread was old, scarred, but strong. On the night of the red moon, Yao Min brought Shen Wei a pouch of night-blooming lotus powder, a rare herb that amplified spiritual resonance. "So your lanterns may reach farther," she said softly. That evening, Shen Wei released a lantern unlike any other, shaped like a lotus, glowing softly with threads of silver and red. He whispered no wish into it, but Yao Min did. "I wish to see the face of the one whose heart I've come to know." As the lantern rose, light spilled down. Her eyes shimmered. She blinked and saw him. Yue Ling, hidden behind the festival cart, smiled through tears. The red moon faded, but its magic lingered. In the morning, the workshop stood empty. Only a lantern remained on the door, a crimson lotus flickering gently. 4 threads mended, 6 to go. Back on Mount Xianlu, Master Bai poured tea beneath the spirit tree. The red moon grants miracles, but at a cost. Elder Zhen nodded. She has not yet faced her own shadow, but she will. In the wind, the tree rustled, and Yue Ling walked on. Chapter 6. The Bridge Beneath the Sea of Stars. In the quiet hours before the dawn, the waters around Lotus Island shimmered with a haunting, otherworldly light. Stars reflected on the surface, as if the heavens had bowed to kiss the sea. It was here, amid the hush of tide and wind, that Yue Ling arrived for her 6th descent. She arrived barefoot, robed in pearl-gray silk, her talisman humming with resonance. The thread she sought was buried deep, woven not just in this life, but across reincarnations that stretched beyond memory. The lovers were Rui Feng, a shipwright whose vessels never sank, and Lianhua, a pearl diver who swam as if born of the sea. Their thread was ancient, knotted by betrayal. In their first life, Rui Feng had sealed Lianhua into a pearl, believing she had cursed his fleet. He later learned she had saved him from a storm, dying in the act. Now, they lived unaware of that tragedy. Yue Ling posed as a traveler seeking passage to the Southern Isles. Rui Feng's shipyard, built on stilts, echoed with the sound of hammers and ocean wind. Lianhua still dove each morning, collecting pearls from the depths. Their eyes met and paused. Yue Ling watched as fate began to stir. She guided them gently, sending visions of another lifetime into their dreams. A silver storm, a pearl that wept, a promise broken. Rui Feng began to recall fragments. A song Lianhua used to sing, The Weight of Regret. Lianhua too woke with tears she couldn't explain. One evening, under the Sea of Stars, a rare event when the sea glowed with bioluminescent light, Rui Feng presented her with a shell, inside a single black pearl. "I don't know why," he said, "but I feel I owe you this." She looked into his eyes. "And I forgive you." In that moment, the curse broke. The sea surged with light, lifting their boat as if blessed. Yue Ling stood atop the cliff, unseen, watching the thread blaze golden. 5 threads mended, 5 to go. Master Bai closed the scroll of records and turned to Elder Zhen. "She will become more than a matchmaker." Elder Zhen nodded gravely. "If she survives her own heart." Chapter 7. The Song of Falling Petals. Hanley was a town perpetually in bloom. Nestled in the embrace of emerald hills and glistening rivers, the town of Hanley was unlike any other in the southern provinces. Here, cherry trees bloomed year-round. The petals never stopped falling, a soft, ceaseless rain of pink and white that carpeted rooftops, cloaked alleyways, and danced across courtyards. It was beautiful, but it was also strange. A town wrapped in such gentle sorrow always hinted at forgotten stories buried beneath the soil. Yue Ling arrived under the guise of a traveling music instructor. Her robes, stitched with the silver sigils of the Fox clan, shimmered faintly beneath the plain brown traveling cloak she wore to pass as human. The seventh red thread had drawn her here, to this quiet place lost to time and memory. And the talisman she wore around her neck glowed faintly, pulsing to the rhythm of a story not yet remembered. The House of Clouded Melodies stood at the edge of a serene lake, its tiled roofs framed by falling blossoms. It was an academy of the highest refinement, a sanctuary for noble daughters to learn music, poetry, calligraphy, and the etiquette of court. Yue Ling was taken in without fuss, her credentials forged by illusion, her aura masked by training. None suspected the true purpose of her arrival. Her presence stirred no great commotion, which suited her well. For 3 days, she watched. She listened. She waited. Then she heard it, a guqin, played beneath a flowering cherry tree in the central courtyard. The melody was haunting. Not technically complex, but rich in emotion. Sorrow layered with longing, love tempered by guilt. Yue Ling followed the sound until she found the player, a young woman, perhaps 17, dressed in flowing white silk. Her hair was unbound, cascading over her shoulders like midnight waves. Her eyes were half-lidded, her lips silent. Ji Yun. She was the daughter of Duke Ji, Lord of Hanli Province, born mute, or so the rumors said. Yet Yue Ling felt the truth press against her senses like the first winds before a storm. Ji Yun was not mute by nature, but by grief. Something ancient clung to her soul, something that stifled her voice even as her fingers poured it into the strings. Yue Ling sat quietly nearby each day, pretending to mend instruments or copy musical scores. She learned Ji Yun's rhythms, her silence, her eyes. And then, on the 5th day, a new figure arrived. Wen Liang. He came as a guest lecturer, a wandering poet whose verses had won the acclaim of distant cities. He was young, with ink-stained fingers and melancholy eyes. He bowed politely to the matron of the house and offered to share his lessons in lyric form. That very evening, he strolled the courtyard and paused when he heard Ji Yun play. He looked up. Their eyes met. Something old stirred between them. Yue Ling felt it like a cord snapping taut. Wen Liang was the other half of the thread. In a past life, Ji Yun had been no mortal. She had been the guardian spirit of the Hanli Grove, a powerful essence born from the centuries-old cherry trees that lined the valley. Wen Liang had been a woodsman then, sent by a local lord to fell trees for construction. He had hesitated, enchanted by the grove's quiet beauty. But when he met her, the spirit who walked in the form of a woman with blossoms for hair and eyes like spring rain, he had faltered entirely. He laid down his axe. He composed poems in her name. And in return, she gave him her heart. But men are easily tempted. A rival lord bribed the woodsman with land and coin. All he had to do was lead soldiers into the grove and reveal where the spirit would be. He did it, for the promise of power, of a life among nobility. The grove burned. Ji Yun was consumed by flame and betrayal. Her last act was to bind her soul into the trees and curse her voice to silence until she could understand why he did it. Now reborn, their souls circled one another again, drawn by threads they could not see. Yue Ling began weaving the path. Each day, she composed melodies infused with old memory. She played them softly in the halls, letting their notes drift like ghosts through open windows. Ji Yun paused mid-practice one day, her hands trembling. Her eyes filled with tears. Wen Liang, walking past a petal-covered path, froze mid-step as a verse rose unbidden in his mind. Where the blossom weeps, the fox recalls, where fire betrayed, no tree still stands. The memories bled in, not fully, but enough. They began to seek one another, not in words, but in art. Wen Liang wrote verses of petals, of guardians, of guilt. Ji Yun answered with melodies threaded in sorrow. One spring night, under the glow of lanterns and falling blossoms, the academy hosted a recital. Yue Ling arranged the performance with gentle guidance. Ji-yun stepped forward, guqin in hand. She played the forbidden song, the one Yue Ling had buried in her heart, passed to her through dreams. When Liang, watching, rose to his feet, he recited his poem aloud. In ash and fire she wept, and yet the petals fall for her still yet. Their eyes met. Ji-yun's hands trembled, her lips parted. Liang. The single word rippled through the courtyard. The petals stopped falling. All who watched wept, though none knew why. Some said a spirit had passed through them. Others claimed it was just the music. But Yue Ling knew. The seventh thread was mended. She left the next morning, walking the quiet roads away from Hanli. Behind her, the cherry trees bloomed anew, not in mourning, but in joy. On Mount Xianlu, Master Bai watched through the scrying pool, his hands clasped. She has begun to awaken old memories of her own, he said. Elder Zhen, seated nearby, nodded. Then, the end will not be far. Only a heart that remembers can choose to break or endure. Chapter 8. Threads Beneath the Moon. The moon hung low over the marshes of Yuhua, a silver mirror veiled by clouds. It was a region long forgotten by cartographers and couriers alike, too haunted for the curious and too quiet for the desperate. But to Yue Ling, its silence sang. The eighth red thread drew her across salt-crusted stone paths and into the ruins of a long-abandoned shrine. The structure had once honored Yue Hua, goddess of the moon and guardian of partings. Now only fragments remained, moss-covered pillars, shattered statues, and an altar sunken into cracked earth. Yue Ling's breath misted in the cold night air. Her talisman pulsed faintly. Somewhere here, the past waited to be unraveled. She stepped across the threshold. A low hum echoed from beneath the altar, like a sigh too old for language. When she placed her palm against the stone, visions came, not as images, but as echoes. Laughter, weeping, a name, Ren Shun. 1,000 years ago, Ren Shun had been a priest of Yuhua, sworn to solitude and silence. But he broke his vow when he fell in love with Mei Lan, a spirit fox who danced by moonlight in the sacred marshes. Their love, like all forbidden things, was fleeting, doomed by the jealousy of another priestess who had long harbored feelings for Ren Shun. She betrayed them. Mei Lan was captured and sealed within a lantern crafted of starlight and iron. Ren Shun, unable to save her, cast himself into the marsh, hoping to follow her in death. But Mei Lan had not perished. She remained trapped, her essence flickering within the lantern, held by a guardian order who believed they were preserving balance. Now, that lantern sat in the shrine, its glow faint but alive. Yue Ling followed the pull of the thread into the shrine's deepest chamber. There, resting atop a pedestal ringed with ancient moonstone, the lantern flickered weakly. And beside it, seated cross-legged in vigil, was a figure dressed in white robes dusted with time. Ren Shun, not dead, not fully alive. His soul lingered, sustained by devotion, but fraying. He turned as she entered, eyes clouded with sorrow and recognition. "You are not of this time," he said softly. Yue Ling bowed. "Nor are you, but you have waited faithfully." "I could not leave," he said. "She still dreams, and dreams must be protected." Yue Ling stepped forward. She reached out and placed a hand upon the lantern. Her magic flowed gently, whispering to the fox spirit within. Mei Lan stirred. "Ren!" His name carried through the veil, and his form flickered. He reached for the lantern, trembling. "You must choose," Yue Ling said gently. "Remain and vanish, or awaken her and let go." Ren Shun wept, but he nodded. He placed both hands on the lantern, closed his eyes, and spoke the old prayer. The lantern shattered in a cascade of light. Mei Lan's spirit emerged, pale and beautiful, her eyes filled with tears. They embraced, just once. And then, like moonlight on water, they faded. The thread vanished from Yue Ling's talisman. In the shrine, silence fell once more, but it was a peace, not a mourning. From the hills above, a lone fox spirit watched with a smile. 8 threads, Yue Ling whispered. 2 more to weave. And she stepped back onto the road beneath the rising moon. Chapter 9. The Fire Beneath the Ice. The 9th red thread pulled Yue Ling far to the north, into the frozen realm of Bai Shu, a land where winter never waned and silence fell heavier than snow. Once a province of joy and music, Bai Shu had turned solemn since the fall of the Qinyue clan, a noble house known for their mastery of both elemental magic and dance. The last remnant of their lineage, a woman named Qinyue Lian, was said to dwell alone atop Mount Guhai. The journey there was treacherous. Winds howled like wolves, and the cliffs were etched with the remains of forgotten paths. But Yue Ling pressed forward, following the thread's steady pull, her cloak rimed with frost, her breath a halo of determination. At the summit, she found a temple carved from pure ice, shining like a star fallen to earth. Within its crystalline halls, Qinyue Lian danced, not for joy, but for memory. Her movements wove sorrow into snow, each step a thread of frozen regret. She did not notice Yue Ling until the spirit fox bowed low at the temple's entrance. "You've come," Lian said without turning. "I've waited." "I am Yue Ling," the fox spirit said. "I carry red threads that bind love long frayed. Yours is nearly severed." Qinyue Lian finally turned. Her eyes were pale blue, like the heart of a glacier. It was severed the day Jiao Tian fell. She spoke of her beloved, a warrior mage who had sacrificed himself to stop an avalanche summoned by rogue warlords. His soul had not reincarnated. Instead, it was trapped beneath the ice, frozen in an endless moment of sacrifice. "I tried to save him," Lian whispered. "I performed the rite of remembrance every solstice, but he never returned." Yue Ling stepped forward, the talisman glowing. "Because he is waiting. For you." She placed the talisman upon the altar at the heart of the temple. Magic shimmered outward, illuminating a hidden path beneath the ice. Together, they descended into the frozen caverns. There, entombed in a crystal cocoon, was Jiao Tian, his expression serene, hands clasped in eternal prayer. Lian knelt before him, her tears melting the frost. "Speak to him," Yue Ling urged. "Call him back." Lian sang a song, one they had shared beneath plum blossoms long ago. Her voice cracked but did not falter. The crystal began to fracture. Jiao Tian opened his eyes. The reunion was quiet. No grand explosions or bursts of light, just 2 souls meeting in the stillness of their truth. But it was enough. As the cocoon dissolved, he reached for her hand. And as they embraced, the cavern warmed. Not from fire, but from love remembered and reborn. They chose to leave the mortal world, ascending in light, to dance once more among the stars. Yue Ling watched them go, a gentle smile curving her lips. The 9th thread dissolved. "One more," she whispered, and with snow trailing her steps like silken ribbons, she descended Mount Guhai toward her final thread. Chapter 10. The Final Thread. The moonlight painted the path ahead, casting long shadows as Yue Ling journeyed deeper into the enchanted forests of Xianghua. This land, full of ethereal beauty and hidden danger, was where the last thread beckoned. Her talisman, still warm from the threads she had woven, pulsed with an intensity she had never felt before. Yue Ling paused at the entrance to a forest clearing, the air around her thick with an otherworldly presence. The final thread was close. Her heart beat faster, unsure whether it was due to the excitement of nearing the end of her journey or the foreboding sense of doom that lingered in the air. Ahead, a figure stood, tall, regal, yet strangely ethereal. It was no human being. She could feel the unmistakable aura of a divine being, but not one that had been seen in the mortal realm for centuries. "Are you the one?" Yue Ling asked softly, Her voice barely more than a whisper. The figure turned, revealing a familiar face. It was Mei Lan, the spirit fox from her past journey, though now she stood as a full, majestic fox spirit, her form shimmering with celestial light. She had transcended. "I am, but not the one you expect," Mei Lan replied, her voice as calm and melodic as the wind itself. Yue Ling stepped forward, a mix of curiosity and concern written across her face. "But you were freed. Why have you returned?" "I was bound to this land, to the last thread," Mei Lan explained. "But the final thread is not mine alone to weave. It requires the strength of those who came before." Yue Ling's brow furrowed in confusion, her hands tightening around the talisman. "What does that mean? I have followed the threads, each one, each spirit freed. Why does the last require more?" "Because you, Yue Ling, are not just a matchmaker," Mei Lan said. "You are a bridge, a key to the next realm. The threads are not just about love or redemption. They are about balance, and you must restore it." The air around them shimmered, and for the first time, Yue Ling felt the weight of her role in this world and the worlds beyond. The two stood in silence, the wind swirling gently around them as the last thread of fate began to unfurl. The forest around them seemed to come alive, as though the very trees were listening. Yue Ling took a deep breath, letting the weight of her destiny settle. Mei Lan raised a paw, beckoning her forward. "The thread must be woven by both of us, but you must choose, Yue Ling. Will you stay as the guardian of the spirit realm, or will you return to the mortal world, where your true destiny awaits?" Yue Ling felt a surge of energy course through her veins. She had always known that her journey was more than simply finding lost spirits and uniting them. It was about restoring harmony between realms, between the living and the dead. She turned to Mei Lan, her eyes filled with understanding. "I choose both," she said. With that declaration, Yue Ling's talisman began to glow brightly, and the threads of fate that had once seemed so tangled now unwound. A final thread, golden and radiant, stretched from the heavens above, weaving into the land and the spirit world. As the thread was woven, Yue Ling's body felt weightless, her spirit lifted to the heavens, and her essence intertwined with the very fabric of the universe. She saw the spirits she had freed, Mei Lan, Ren Sun, and all those before them. Their faces were serene, their spirits now at peace. And in that moment, Yue Ling understood the true meaning of her journey. The balance of the realms was restored, and her role as the Spirit Fox matchmaker was complete. But in the endless dance of fate, the journey would never truly end. Epilogue. A new dawn years passed, and the winds of time continued their relentless march, yet the story of Yue Ling, the Spirit Fox matchmaker, remained etched in the hearts of those who knew it. The realms, both mortal and spiritual, flourished in an era of harmony, a peace that had long been sought and never before achieved. In the mortal world, the people spoke in hushed reverence of the matchmaker who had bridged the realms, a figure whose compassion and wisdom had brought balance to the chaos that once reigned. Monuments were built in her honor, and stories of her deeds were passed down from generation to generation, each painting her as a hero, a guide, and a savior. But for Yue Ling, life had always been more than titles and legends. Her role as the Spirit Fox matchmaker had never been about fame. It had been about restoring what was broken, healing what had been torn apart, and mending the delicate threads of fate that connected all beings, living and spirit alike. She walked now, not as a solitary figure, but as one with the world around her. A warm breeze stirred the branches of the trees in the forest of Xianghua, and she smiled softly as she thought of her journey. There were still many souls to be reunited, and though her task as the matchmaker had been completed, her work was far from over. As the sun began to set, casting golden rays across the land, Yue Ling stood at the edge of a tranquil lake. The reflection of the mountains shimmered on the surface, and for a moment she closed her eyes and allowed herself to breathe deeply. The world was at peace. One thread can change everything, she whispered, feeling the presence of Mei Lan and the other spirits who had helped her along the way. In the distance, a fox with silver fur appeared, its eyes shining like stars. It was a spirit, a reminder of the first thread she had ever woven, the beginning of her journey. The fox approached her slowly, its ethereal form shimmering in the fading light. "Have you come to say goodbye?" Yue Ling asked, though she knew the answer. The fox merely sat beside her, its gaze gentle and knowing. "No," Yue Ling said with a smile. "I understand now. The journey never truly ends." As the last rays of the sun sank beneath the horizon, a new dawn began to rise, not only for the world, but for Yue Ling herself. She was no longer just a matchmaker between the realms. She had become part of the eternal cycle, a guardian of balance and a keeper of fate. And so, her story continued, woven into the fabric of time, never forgotten, never truly finished.